Hello, another video. I asked a Discord for ideas, and I know this was a joke, a brief summary of events leading up to the Civil War, but I kind of want to do that, because I can. So we're actually going to start with the cotton gin. So the cotton gin is a machine that was invented It's a machine that was invented. It looks kind of like this, where basically it makes cleaning cotton much easier. So how does this lead up to the Civil War? Well, when Eli Whitney invented this, the slave trade exploded because people wanted slaves because cotton became a lot more valuable. And this made slaves more valuable, and in 1808, when Congress banned the importation of slaves from Africa, then the slave trade exploded, and partially because of the cotton gin. The next event after that, I'm actually going to go straight to the Missouri Compromise. So this was a compromise. So Missouri applied to join the Union. So with the Louisiana Purchase, they got all this land, and Missouri applied to join the Union as a slave state. But the North didn't like that because there were 11 free states and 11 slave states, which basically made, and they liked that because that kept the balance of power in Congress. But then that kept the balance of power in Congress. So they made a deal. Missouri can join as a slave state, but then Maine becomes a free state. So then that makes it to 12-12. And no state above the southern border of Missouri can become a free state. So like Arkansas is slave, Kansas, whatever, is free, Michigan free. Yeah, so that tried to make everyone happy and meh. So next, I guess we could talk about a few speeches and stuff. So the Liberator was written by an abolitionist, William Lloyd Garrison, and it was really a newspaper that was anti-slavery, and it was one of the most important anti-slavery newspapers, if not the most important, and it persuaded a lot of people. But the next thing I want to talk about is the Compromise of 1850. So this was a compromise, so one sec. Basically, California applied to join the Union as a free state, but the South didn't like that, obviously, so they made a deal. California could be a free state, but California could be a free state, and the territories of Utah and New Mexico are determined by popular sovereignty, which the people there vote on if it should be slave or free. And slave trade was banned in Washington, D.C., which made abolitionists happy. I think that's it, yeah. And the Fugitive Slave Act, which was the part to make the South happy, which said you can capture any escaped slave, a fugitive, and helping a fugitive would actually result in going to jail or getting fined. And judges were actually rewarded. Well, they weren't even judges. They were like a special commission. They were rewarded for returning fugitives. So after this, I want to look at the Kansas-Nebraska Act. So the Kansas-Nebraska Act was proposed by Senator Stephen A. Douglas, very important guy. So he wanted to build a transcontinental railroad. He wanted to use his home state of Illinois he wanted to use Chicago as a place so it can go from Chicago to California to build the transcontinental railroad. And he proposed that the territories of Kansas and Nebraska were actually open to slavery, which obviously the North did not like, and it went against the Missouri Compromise. As you can see, there's Missouri, there's Kansas, and Nebraska. So the North didn't like that. So the South was like, fine, how about we'll let it be determined by popular sovereignty, which once again is letting the people decide. So this happened, and it proved not a good idea. It led to something we now know as... So then when an abolitionist, John Brown, led a raid somewhere, I think it was like the Potawatomi Massacre or something, I don't know, he basically killed a bunch of pro-slavery border ruffians, which is what they were called, and that kickstarted years of violence known as Bleeding Kansas, where around a few hundred people died from fighting. After that, there's a few more things I want to talk about. The Dred Scott decision was a Supreme Court case that basically said... So Dred Scott was a slave who... His master took him to free states, but then he went back to the South, and he applied for freedom, but the courts didn't let him. And then the Supreme Court ruled that he was still a slave, and Chief Justice Taney took it one step further, saying that African Americans cannot be citizens, Scott had no right to sue, and he was property, and Congress couldn't ban slavery anywhere, and abolitionists were very enraged, and the South were obviously very happy. Second to last thing I'm going to talk about is John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry. So Harper's Ferry is a town in Northern Virginia, and John Brown was an abolitionist who I talked about before, and he wanted to end slavery, basically. This was 1859, by the way. And he took some weapons and some slaves at the Virginian town Harper's Ferry and started to make his way south and tried to make a major slave uprising and basically end slavery. But he was quickly captured by, he was either a colonel or a general at the time, Robert E. Lee, and executed a little later. The North viewed Brown as a martyr, but the South was like he should be... And then he was hanged. So the South wanted him hanged, but the North viewed him as a martyr, and this divided the country more. The last straw for the South was obviously the 1860 election, which is probably my second favorite election to look at, behind 1824, which obviously that's a very interesting election. But anyway, it was a close race. Abraham Lincoln won. He wasn't even on the ballot in the South. I believe he's the only president to win without ever winning a southern state, except Eisenhower, I don't know. But he won, and the South seceded, and then Lincoln famously stated, "In your hands and not in mine is the momentous issue of Civil War." At Fort Sumter, the Confederates capture the fort, and boom, the Civil War started.